Welcome to the Inspiring Good podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, which serves a vibrant community in northern Indiana known for its generosity and strong network of nonprofit organizations. I'm Marshall King, your co-host with Kevin Deary, a veteran nonprofit CEO who now coaches others. Rob LaRoy is Executive Director of the Humane Society of Elkhart County. He is our guest today. This job for Rob is his third career, having previously overseen a Big Brothers Big Sisters organization and worked in YMCAs. Rob, good to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Marshall. I'm very glad to be here today.
So glad to have you, my friend. One of the veteran CEOs here now in Elkhart County. Done such a good job, and somebody I know I can call on anytime. But we're here to talk about Humane Society of Elkhart County, and why don't you talk a little bit about the mission and what you guys do over there?
Yeah, we're excited to have the opportunity to talk about the Humane Society and animal welfare in general, just kind of what changes we've seen, especially since COVID. You know, the Humane Society, our mission is to rescue, rehabilitate, and rehome animals. And we also advocate for the compassionate care of animals just in our community.
So what drew you to this job?
Well, you know, I had spent some time at Big Brothers Big Sisters and at the Y, and, you know, had really spent a lot of time with children and people, and really had the opportunity to see what animals do for people in our community. You know, more so than even 20 years ago, animals are becoming part of our families. You know, maybe sometimes people take it too far with some of the outfits that I see people put their pets in, but you know, I think that they can definitely do some good in bringing children up and giving them some responsibility, and adults as well.
My wife's a retired dog groomer, and she will tell you that people will take better care of their dogs than they do themselves. In times of when money is tight, they'll push off their hair and appointments, but their dog will go every 2 weeks on time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a book out right now, and it's titled "My Dog Always Eats First." And it was a social psychologist who went into the homeless population and talked to people who have pets with them while they're homeless. And it's providing them with something to live for. It's providing them for responsibility. And they have said, I'll go without eating before something happens to my dog. This is who I'm here to take care of.
Now, I recently put my dog, Clemson, his name's Clemson, he's a little mini schnauzer. I put him on a performance improvement plan at home. Just sat down, had a talk with him about incessant barking and taking his food and throwing it all over the carpet, eating 2 pieces and going back to his bowl. And you got any advice for me on that?
Well, you know, you're the coach here, Kevin, and I would suspect that, you know, your behavior modification has worked very well in your home, and I'm sure it will work for Clemson as well.
Well, he's a project, that's for sure. Hey, let's talk about community. How do you balance your very busy and growing job at the Humane Society with all of your community responsibilities?
Yeah, you know, this is something that, you know, as I left the YMCA and moved into my role at the Humane Society, I thought, you know, at the YMCA, you know, we had swimming and we had football and we had soccer, and, you know, every minute of every day there was something happening at the facility. And I thought, man, I'm going to take it easy a little bit. I'm going to go into this, you know, program where all we really do is adopt animals out. Man, was I wrong. I mean, there is 1,000 moving parts, just like any nonprofit that you come across. But, you know, the number of people that we serve outside of the building is twice the number of people we serve in the building. And so it's been pretty interesting to see that, how our work collaborating with others in the community has really worked towards serving more animals and more people.
You have completed a capital campaign just a few years ago and just have a beautiful, stunning facility. Had the privilege of taking a tour, met with you in your office. How did that come about?
Well, you know, the prior shelter, I came after the shelter was completed, so I was very fortunate. The prior shelter had been built in the late 50s, and, you know, was in need of repair. In the past, a lot of shelters, ourselves included, used bleach to clean everything. That was really how we could sanitize. And as you know, bleach will just destroy everything that you use to clean it with. And so it was time. Ann Reel, my predecessor, one of her last acts was to put together a team to really go out and raise that money, and raised nearly $6 million to build this new facility. And I think it's just a picture of our community. I think you've seen it over and over, obviously, that people want the best for both the people and the pets in our community, and went out and got that done.
I believe we used the same contractor.
I think so,
Well,
yeah.
because we were building the same time Humane Society was building. So just what a tremendous community we have. So generous, so giving. They see a need in the community, and they value their children, their elderly, their animals. So we're just blessed to live here. I came from New England, as you know, and I've never seen any place like this. I've been here 32 years now, and I don't plan on leaving because the people are that special. Let me ask a question about your programs. What kind of programs and initiatives do you have going on?
So we have a lot of things going on at the shelter, and as I intimated a minute ago, there's always a million things going on. We are the third largest shelter in the state of Indiana by intake. You would think, that being really a smaller community or a less populous county, we would not be, but we served nearly 12,000 animals last year. And a lot of that is going through our small clinic right now. We're in the process right now of completing a larger space for our clinic, and we'll probably looking at about 6,000 to 7,000 animals getting spayed or neutered through that clinic next year. So certainly a big part of what we do there. We are also animal control for the county. As we got post-COVID and law enforcement became more and more stretched, and it's become more and more difficult for law enforcement to fill all of the spots that they need to have, one of the largest number of calls they get is for animal complaints. And so the animal control officers that we employ are not law enforcement by any means, but we've taken on a larger share of that, where the county sheriffs and local deputies and local municipalities have taken on calls in the past. We're doing the majority of that now. So that's a very large program for us, and it's really changed over the years from more of a enforcement or a controlling part of our services to really working with people to discovering how can we keep your dog at home. Okay, so your dog has gotten out. What's the issue? Well, the kids were on spring break. They left the gate open. We let the dog out. It ran. Okay, well, that's an easy fix. 2, we let the dog out. There's a hole in the fence. It got through the fence. Okay, well, let's figure out how we can fix the hole in the fence rather than bringing your dog back to you 3 times. So our animal control officers are really becoming more in-field social workers, working with people to understand what's going on with their pets and how to work with getting them home. Well, the bigger programs that we do is we do return animals in the field to people. It used to be we'd go out, pick the pet up, bring it back to the shelter and put it in a kennel, and if they showed up, they showed up, and if not, then we took the animal and we adopted it out or sent it to a rescue. And we're spending a lot more time now trying to return the animal in the field.
I see your trucks everywhere. So, do you have any funny stories about from some of your officers that are out there that, whether it's raccoons or snakes, or you got to have just a lot of those stories?
Well, one that comes to mind immediately. So you think of the Humane Society. Most of the time, you're thinking of dogs and cats. However, we see about 50 different species every year. Skunks, deer, turtles. I think we have 2 rabbits in our facility right now. So there's just a whole range of animals that we're supposed to be the experts for. We're not Steve Irwin by any means, but a few years ago we got a call in the city of Elkhart that a neighbor swore she saw an alligator in the neighbor's backyard. And we thought, well, what is this person on, first of all? Well, go over, let's check it out. Sure enough, there was an alligator in this person's backyard. They had one of those little kiddie pools, half filled with water, and they had an alligator in the yard. So just in case, any of your podcast listeners are wondering, it is illegal to own an alligator in the city of Elkhart without the proper documentation. And so our officers brought that alligator back, and it lived in our shower at work for about 3 days. And believe it or not, there is an alligator rescue in Athens, Michigan. And so we put the call out to our volunteers. We need someone to bring this alligator up to Athens, Michigan. And surprisingly, we didn't have any takers on that. So my wife said, you know what, being the good wife, I'll take the animal up there. I'll take the alligator up there. And so she loaded up our 4 younger children. And, we did the best possible thing we could do. We put the alligator in a 4-foot rubber tote and poked some holes in the top of it and put it in the van, and she took off to Athens, Michigan. Well, about halfway there, that alligator raised its head up and popped the lid off of the top of that tote. And so my 10-year-old daughter screams, gets out of her seat, and goes over and sits on top of the tote the rest of the way to Athens to keep that alligator in it. And so my wife reminds me frequently that sometimes she's kind of done volunteering for us.
That's a great story, Rob. What you see the full range of animal health in Elkhart County. I mean, you see animals that are pampered, you see animals that aren't. What do you know about our community because of what you see related to the health of the animals in our community?
So I think the best way to look at that is that, people truly care about animals in particular and mostly about their pets. But, even when we see hoarding situations where people will have 30, 40 cats in their house, it all started because they loved these animals. They started with 2, 3, 4 cats. Weren't able to get them spayed or neutered, either didn't have the means to do so or couldn't get in to get it done. And before you know it, you've got 30 cats in your house. They never intended to have that happen, and it can turn into a real health issue for them as well. But I would say, more than anything else, that people love their pets in our community, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily different than a lot of places. But in our community, we have people that are willing to help them. We work with about 30 different rescues, most of them right here in Elkhart County. Without the rescue work that's being done, we would be inundated with animals. And I always say you can never build a shelter large enough to house all the animals that need help in your community. But without these rescues, there would be a lot more situations going on that we would need to make drastic steps with,
How many rescues do we have?
I think that we're anywhere from about 15 to 20 rescues in our county. We work with a lot of rescues in LaGrange and St. Joe and Kosciuszko County as well. Having the clinic at our shelter, a lot of our rescues come to us to do the surgery for their animals and, even just provide rabies shots or vaccinations or whatever. And so we have the opportunity to work with a lot of different people.
I live in a neighborhood that is populated by a lot of feral cats. So how did that situation happen, and how does it keep on happening?
Well, overpopulation in our county is crazy. We have overpopulation of both dogs and cats. The difference is that dogs can be seen as public nuisances and safety issues, and so we don't allow them to just run around. And I mean, we as in a community. Whereas cats, people think, well, they're kind of taking care of themselves. They may be a barn cat and, are hunting and keeping mice out of our yard or whatever. But, one of the things that we really need to consider is really being able to spay and neuter the majority of these community cats so that we don't just see this population continuing to grow. We did a pilot project with Timberbrook Mobile Home Park, which is across the street from the shelter. And trapped in 2020 and 2021, we trapped over 180 cats in that trailer park. And we've seen that population continue to dwindle just in the last 2-3 years. And so we know that this is something that'll work. The problem is that the problem is so large, it would be difficult to be able to spay and neuter enough of these cats to be able to really make a dent in it. And also there's the situation that there are just some people that don't want cats in their yard. And I completely understand that. If your neighbor has 20 cats that she's feeding in her backyard, you don't necessarily want them over on your deck and scratching in all your plants and everything else outside. And so it really is an issue. One of the problems that we have right now is that we're not doing anything to combat it. Other than people who, out of the kindness of their heart, are capturing these cats and paying out of their own pocket to spay or neuter, we're not making a dent in the population.
So, Rob, if somebody encounters a situation like this, do they just call the Humane Society? Like, part of the larger question is, how do people best engage the Humane Society or get involved? Whether it's in their neighborhood, with an unfortunate situation, or helping the agency itself. Like, how do people engage you?
Yeah, so we do a lot of education pieces outside of the shelter, but obviously making a phone call to us first, especially in a situation where you would have, a lot of feral cats in your community. There are things that we can do to work with the neighbors to help with that, as far as some deterrents to keep them out of your yard. We don't trap the cats ourselves anymore, but there are several rescues that do. And so we can work with those rescues to work on that. We provide a lot of our education online now, too. Just, I think it was one of the good things that came out of COVID was that we realized there had to be a different way for us to get the word out of how to, work with your own pet or work with neighbors that are, not necessarily taking care of their pets the way they ought to. And so being able to provide that information either through social media or online has been a good step for us to get more of the word out. I do think, though, that myself, as I came into this position and as I talk to people in our community, there's a lack of understanding of just how big of a problem animals are in our area. The running at large dogs and the community cats that we've talked about. Just the thought that the shelter is there to take care of all of these situations. The shelter ought to be a place for animals that don't have a home, or don't have behavioral issues, or are sick or injured, and we're taking in animals that have an owner, and we're trying to find the owner. And so a lot of that should be done in the community with our guidance where we can help, but we spend a lot of time taking care of animals that already have an owner.
You mentioned that you do animal control for the county and Elkhart City. Do you do it for all the municipalities, or like, I know that sometimes there are arrangements needed there. Like, what can you come to the city of Goshen or the town of Millersburg and help someone in need?
Yes, we work with every municipality. Until about 3 years ago, we did not serve Napanee. Napanee was actually serviced by Kosciuszko County, but we brought them in about 3 years ago. So we work with every municipality, which is, a challenge in itself, that our animal control officers have to have at least an officer, a law enforcement officer, or the chief that they're able to make contact with and be able to work with in situations that are dangerous. Sometimes our animal control officers are put in some pretty dangerous situations. If someone is barricaded in a home and there's a pit bull in there with them, the law enforcement officers are not going in until we have that pit bull. And so we work hand in hand with law enforcement, and of course they're there to help keep our employees safe. But it's becoming more and more of a dangerous situation to work in that type of role.
So one nuisance that you'll see over social media a lot, and I know you have no control over this, but maybe it's something you can speak to, and that is Canadian geese. They are everywhere. I mean, like almost Alfred Hitchcock birds level. Why are there so many, and why are they? I know they're protected.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation because they're federally protected. However, and we'd have to talk with Jameson Zarnecki to get the exact language on this. Those that are, and I might get this backwards, those that are transitory, we cannot do anything with. But if they are geese that stay in our area, we're able to do something with. And just because they're federally protected, we just kind of stay away from them, But they are a
so we need to check their documentation. Is that what you're saying?
That's it. Yeah, we need to check their passport, see where their home is located, and most of them are banded, and we get geese occasionally. It's not something that there's a whole lot we can do with, but all the wild animals become somebody's issue at some point, and so Canadian geese are one that I think we'll continue to see be an issue for some time.
Yeah, just a lot. So let's talk about building an organization. So when you came in to the Humane Society, you took over an organization that had been around for a long time and been run well, but you knew there were some needs and some opportunities, And you started with, I believe, the looking at the staff and making sure we had the right staff. You wanted to have a higher level clinical, technical ability to take care of animals. So I thought, one of the things when we first met, when you first got here, was you just wanted to bring in a higher level of care to the animals. But also you started working on transformation of the board. So, and that's something that we talk a lot about in our nonprofit circles, but maybe you can talk about that journey of while you're building your team and volunteers, you're also building the board.
Yeah, actually today happens to be the Humane Society of Elkhart County's birthday. We're 86 years old today. And so, over those 86 years, our board and our volunteers have looked very different. Started in the early years, it was mostly for dogs, really concerned with rabies at that time. Most animals were not vaccinated by any means, and was really a situation where it was a public safety issue. Over the years, our board has transformed and changed. I mentioned my predecessor earlier. She walked into a situation where the Humane Society was in pretty dire need of leadership, and, had some great partners come alongside her. Tom and Sarah Elkin came on the board and, really gave a lot of credence to the board of directors and to the Humane Society. That kind of evolved into a few more people who were very caring and had some good sense. Bernice Sims came on our board, and with her time at the bank, and from there grew into Lana Schultz and Kim Welch coming on our board, and really just starting to kind of build that business sense and a sense of being connected in our community. And so they've continued to bring in these professionals who not only have prior board experience in other areas, but really have the connections in the community to go out and talk about the Humane Society and the programs that we're doing and really garner support for it. We've always had kind, caring, compassionate, animal-minded people on our board. And we still have that, but that's not been the first thing that we ask someone before they come onto our board now. Now we know, okay, we're looking for an attorney, and so we go out and we talk to Joel Duthie, and, are fortunate to have Joel come on our board, and Chris Potrates from Warwick and Boyne. We've been able to bring some of these very talented people onto our board of directors that then make it so much easier for me to be able to work with our leadership team and build that.
You mentioned Bernie Sims. We'll put a link to the story in the show notes, but in our last annual report, we did a story about Bernie and her legacy gift that she left to the Community Foundation after her death that helps the endowment of the Humane Society and some other organizations. It's a great story of leaving a legacy and inspiring generosity. And so I'm glad that you brought her up.
Yeah, we miss her every day. Not only was she a great supporter of the organization, but she also went above and beyond, working in that red barn countless hours, tagging, things to be sold, garage sale style, with all the proceeds coming to the shelter. She was just a lot of fun. Even when she was at Brentwood, she would have their drivers bring her back over to the Humane Society just to talk. And so if you've ever ridden with Bernice, first of all, you're lucky you're still around. She drove 80 miles an hour everywhere she went and pulled in on two wheels, and so when she came, the last time I saw her at the shelter, she came in and I asked her if they had let her drive the bus over there. She said, "Oh, no, they won't let me drive that, and it wouldn't go fast enough anyway," she says. So, it's just a really great lady and did a lot for our community.
She lived life to its fullest, loved her community. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about volunteers. So you mentioned the Red Barn. My wife has volunteered for a couple of years at the Humane Society, loves it. She's done everything from dog grooming. She came home one day, told me she was going to Illinois because she was delivering a dog to Illinois. So I know she's done transport. She's folded 1,000 towels or more because of the nonstop laundry. And she's worked at the Red Barn. And so she's really kind of had she's also walked dogs and did all that. But she's really enjoyed her experience. But what are you looking for for volunteers? If somebody wanted to volunteer, there's so many opportunities Tell me about your volunteer program.
Yeah, we have a lot of areas for people to volunteer, and we have a lot of volunteers. Some of them we may see once, twice a week. Some people we may see once every 6 months. But what they're really doing is they're allowing the animals a time to socialize in many cases, So we have 4 outdoor runs for the dogs to play in, and then we have a 1-acre play yard where we actually host play groups for the dogs that are in the shelter. And a lot of our volunteers are really doing that work. Our staff are involved in cleaning the kennels, feeding the dogs, giving the cats, giving them what medications they need. It doesn't leave a whole lot of time to socialize any of the animals. And so these volunteers are coming in and doing that. And then, as you mentioned, our laundry. We run 17 commercial loads of laundry every day. Every animal gets a towel or a blanket, gets a bed. All of those things need to be washed every day. And so, most of the animals are going through 2-3 towels or blankets a day, and our volunteers are stepping in and taking care of some of those roles that probably aren't the most glamorous thing, when you're shaking what ends up in those blankets out and washing them. It's probably not the most glamorous task in the world.
I do know that my wife and I obviously share chores, but she would fold the laundry, but not the towels. She left those for me. She had folded enough towels that week. So let me ask a question. There's a lot of young folks that want to get into nonprofit work, and they want to be a nonprofit leader, executive director, CEO. They want to lead their organization. And you remember when we were young in our career, that's what we were going to do. We just couldn't wait to get in the seat of authority and make things run. Then we got there, and we realized there's a lot of late nights and early mornings and weekends, and it's a lot of work. And most importantly, it's a tremendous responsibility with the authority. But if you could give advice to today's young people that are coming up and are applying for these roles of community leader of any nonprofit, what advice would you give them?
So first of all, I'd say I continue to be impressed every day with the young people that work for me, and young people that work in nonprofits in particular in our community. We see the work that they're doing, and it's one of the things that, as the veteran, as you call it, I think that just means you're old enough, you've been around for a while. You see these young people who are really starting to feel their way through nonprofit leadership. We have a lot of young leaders in our facility, and it's one of the things that really gives me the strength. I think the thing that worked for us as we were coming up is what will work for them as well. It's really being a servant leader, rejecting passivity, that you can't just let things happen. You have to make sure that it's happening in the right way, which means you need to accept responsibility and lead courageously in what you're doing. And so, I think as our young leaders look at the direction that they're going, I think it serves them well to look at themselves as a servant first.
I love that, being a servant leader, but lead courageously and know how to find that balance, that in-between road. That's such great advice. What are the biggest challenges facing the Humane Society right now?
So I think, our growth becomes a challenge. We have tripled our budget in 5 years. We're just finishing an addition on our facility. But the biggest challenge overall is the overpopulation in our community. We have a lot of commercial breeders in our community. We have a lot of backyard breeders, whether if it's by accident or on purpose. It's a moneymaker for people. And to be quite honest, there are people that want certain breeds of dogs, and so they kind of look at that as an opportunity to get a doodle. I have a doodle myself, and he's one of the best dogs I've ever had. So I understand the desire to get a certain breed of dog. I think that's the challenge going forward is how we continue to work with our commercial breeders, many of whom are doing tremendous work and doing it well, doing it right. They're working with veterinarians. All of their puppies are getting all the shots that they need. They're seeing vets and getting all of the work done correctly. A lot of times people ask me about puppy mills, and I would say, we do have a challenge with that in our community. In any type of business, there are going to be people that don't do it well. I would say it's similar to kind of our hoarding situations where they get into it because they really love these animals. and it's what they want to do, and they're providing a service. They get in over their heads, and that's where it really becomes a problem. But for me to sit here and speak poorly of commercial breeders or the work that they're doing would be ingenuous, because I know that it's a service that people want, and most of them are doing it very well.
Rob, if you could, looking at pets, I mean, when I grew up, if you wanted a dog or a cat, you went to the pet shop. Now, I grew up in a city. That was a long time ago. But much like puppy mills or people who are breeding animals, adoption, you guys have streamlined it, which I really much appreciate, because many years ago, people didn't want to take the time to do the adoption because of the amount of time when they could just walk into a barn or a store and buy it. But because you guys do your homework, you make sure they're spayed and neutered. But you have really streamlined, and what's it, about 15 minutes now?
It's about 15 minutes now. It's one of the things that we're most proud of, that we've really reduced the barriers to adopting a pet. And you're right, you come in, it's already spayed or neutered, it's had all of its shots. If it's on medication, those medications are going home with you, so you have the opportunity to come in, walk through, see a pet that sticks out to you. And quite often we'll hear people say, well, my pet chose me, I didn't choose it. As they're walking through, this one just looked into my eyes and saw into my soul and knew that it had to go home with me, and so many times we can see them as they're leaving the facility, and it's not just a tail wag on the dog, it's a whole body shimmer. They're just so happy to be heading out. One of the things in particular is that we really look at our length of stay for animals, and there's no time period for animals at all. If they're in the shelter, they're in the shelter, and they're being evaluated on things outside of how long they've been there, So, one of the questions I get frequently is the difference between a kill shelter and a no-kill shelter. Just to give you the definition, a no-kill shelter means that 90% of the animals that come in your facility go back out alive in some way. We do euthanize animals at time, and we always strive for that 90% mark, and some years we've hit it. We've been as high as 93% before. In other years, last year in particular, we were at 87%. One of the things in particular that we've seen is we've seen a lot of sick cats. And I think one of the reasons for that is what you talked about earlier, is that people that just have too many cats and these ferals that are in their community, they come into us, and it may be thousands of dollars to medicate this cat and help it feel better. And at the end of the day, you could put all that money into this cat, and you still have a feral cat that no one's going to want in their home. It's going to eat your couch, So we do end up, kind of walking that line. We always try to make the right decision for every animal on an individual basis. It's not based on, how long they've been in the shelter, or how old they are, how young they are, anything like that. It's like what's best for this animal now.
Rob, we always close with a question to our guests which is, what gives you hope?
Yeah, I think the thing that I keep coming back to is the young staff that we have. I'm sitting here now and knowing that I'm not going to be running the shelter forever, and I have quite a few years left, I hope. And of course, that's always up to my board of directors, I guess. I work at their pleasure, but the young leaders that we have in our organization and those that I see in the nonprofits in our community, we're in good hands moving forward. There are a lot of good people working in nonprofits right now, and we see it in our CEO roundtable group with the leaders that we have that come in, and I'm just so impressed with the 25, 30, 35-year-old people that are coming in and running these organizations.
Full of energy.
Full of energy and doing a great job. Yeah. I think that's the challenge is, when you're 25 or 30 years old. I became an executive director at 27 years old.
I was 32.
And like you, I thought I knew what I was doing, and that's a scary thing. I was very fortunate that I had it was a past director of a Big Brothers Big Sisters that came alongside of me and, kind of took me by the hand and sometimes kind of whacked me in the back of the head and said, this is what you need to be doing, do this, and really kind of guiding me along the way. So I hope I can be the person that kind of smacks people in the back of the head and helps there and maybe take them by the hand sometimes too.
This show is a production of the Community Foundation of Elkhart County. It is powered by equipment from Sweetwater and recorded at the Community Foundation's offices in Elkhart's River District. Editing is done by the award-winning communication students at Goshen College, home of one of the best college radio stations in the nation. Listen to Globe Radio at 91.1 FM. Music is provided by Sensational Sounds. Learn more about the Community Foundation of Elkhart County at inspiringgood.org. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thanks for listening. We hope you're inspired and inspire good in your community.